Tastes like monetization. Did you guys know that Baja Blast is back in stores? Not sponsored. So things changed after my last video. Essentially, I was an extremely small channel, and then I posted a Degrassi deep dive, and it blew up. Before that video, I had 56 subscribers, and now I have 3,000? I don't know what to say. I kind of can't believe it. Thank you to everyone who watched it, everyone who subscribed, everyone who went back and watched my other videos. That means so much to me. I've been at this for a little over a year now, and pretty much every video I made, I would secretly be like, maybe this one will be the one to blow up, but it would never happen. So the fact that it actually did happen is unbelievable to me. It's like a sign that you should never give up on your dreams because you just never know when they could materialize. But anyways, here's the thing. I've gotten several comments from people asking me to do more Degrassi content, to talk about the relationships, my favorite whatevers, etc. And I am potentially interested in covering some of those things at some point, but to be quite honest, I am not going to become a Degrassi channel. I don't have the emotional bandwidth for that right now. If anything, I feel like I need a bit of a break from Degrassi. But because so many people found this channel through my Degrassi video, and because I'm honestly pretty much still suffering from Degrassi brain, I wanted to make my next video at least tangentially related to the show. So consider this video a bridge between Degrassi content and my usual content. If you don't know, typically on this channel I cover movies, TV, occasionally books, and I have a particular fascination with bad media. So when I was doing all my Degrassi research, specifically looking into the cast, something that intrigued me right away was the amount of bad movies, especially bad TV movies, that these actors have appeared in. Let's talk about why that may be. As you probably know if you're a Degrassi fan, the show was shot and set in Toronto, Ontario, and coincidentally, a lot of film and television projects shoot in Toronto and Canada at large. Not only is Toronto a big city that houses a lot of film companies, actors, and one of the biggest film festivals in the world, but the Canadian government actually gives tax incentives to production companies, making places like Toronto and Vancouver particularly popular filming locations for lower budget film and television productions. So if you've ever watched a Lifetime or Hallmark or Disney Channel original movie, or maybe even a foreign film set in the West, there's a good chance you've seen at least one that was shot in Toronto. In fact, my favorite Bollywood movie, Kal Na Ho, is set in New York, but it was filmed in Toronto. Pighla pighla hai, dil mera jab se. Now, Degrassi is a show that featured multiple generations of young, small-time Toronto actors, and post-Degrassi, a lot of those actors seem to occupy this sort of B-list celebrity space, where they're a recognizable face to a lot of viewers, but they don't necessarily have the mainstream Hollywood cred to land roles in as many really legit productions. And to be clear, I do not mean this as an insult or anything. I think just about all of those actors were really good, and a lot of them have been in some really cool projects, but with the occasional exception like Drake, Nina Dobrev, maybe Stephen James, it seems like most Degrassi actors are still best known for being Degrassi actors. So understandably, a lot of them were and still are ripe to star in a few weird, low-budget movies shooting in the Toronto area. Many of these are television films. It seems like Lifetime in particular has cast a lot of Degrassi actors over the years. They must shoot a lot of their movies in Canada. Disney Channel is also a pretty big player, but I'm not including any of those in this video because I actually covered quite a few in my Halloween DCOMs video. I had a whole running bit where I kept recognizing Degrassi actors. I recognize that kid. Is that Craig from Degrassi? So if you want to see me talk about DCOMs with Degrassi cameos, check out that video. For this video, I looked into the filmographies of several prominent Degrassi actors and made a few selections. In terms of selection criteria, I tried to look for movies with multiple Degrassi alums, though in the end, I think what took priority was just how funny or stupid the movies sounded to me. I actually did do some vetting. Some films I started and abandoned because they were just too uninteresting, but let's go through those very very quickly. The first film I watched was Deadly Inferno. This movie has Charlotte Arnold, who played Holly J on Degrassi, as well as Ephraim Ellis, who played Rick. This is a disaster movie, sort of in the tradition of The Towering Inferno, about an office building catching on fire. I only got through about 25 minutes, but I'd say the best part of the film, especially for Degrassi fans, is Ephraim Ellis's role. He plays this slacker maintenance guy who actually ends up causing the fire by accidentally turning on a gas line early in the film. It's always Rick, isn't it? Anyways, I wouldn't recommend watching this, but I am going to show you the best part that I saw, which was Rick trying to light a cigarette in the gas-filled room and exploding. I also watched maybe 40 minutes of the movie Adam's Testament, which stars Luke Billick, aka our boy Drew Torres. Don't get me wrong, this movie is really, really bad, like actually worse than most of the ones I'm going to talk about, but it's also not very entertaining. It's a very strange movie. It's about spiritual warfare, of all things. Listen to this plot summary. After the tragic death of his mother, Adam takes refuge even more in music with his band and his girlfriend. His father, Joseph, who works as a detective, is faced with the mission of saving Adam's soul since angels and demons disguise themselves as humans. I don't know, there are angels and demons. I don't think I actually got far enough in the movie to understand where they were going with that. Wouldn't recommend this one, it's pretty boring. But hey, it did win Best Supporting Actress at the International Christian Film Festival. I watched like the first third of the Lifetime movie Friends Who Kill, which stars Alex Steele, aka Tori or Angela. She played 2 Degrassi characters in her time. It also stars Sarah Fisher, aka Becky. You all remember Becky. But I think you're great and my name is Becky. I think this is one of those thriller movies where like a person makes friends with someone but turns out to be evil and wants to mess up the protagonist's life for some poorly defined reason. It's what I call the roommate plot. I don't know, I tapped out of this one because it was just an extremely boring, basic Lifetime movie. The thing about Lifetime and Hallmark movies is that when they're good bad, they can be extremely hilariously good bad, but that is like maybe 5% of all Lifetime and Hallmark movies. The other 95% are the most boring, cookie-cutter, zero-effort movies you've ever seen, and this is one of those. I also tried watching The Wrong Crush, which stars Ricardo Hoyos, aka Zig Novak, and similarly to the last one, it was just too boring. But I didn't make it very far, so maybe I just didn't get to the funny stuff. And finally, I watched like 15 minutes of the movie Kiss and Cry, which is a based on a true story romantic drama starring Sarah Fisher and Luke Billick about a figure skater who was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer and started making music online. And honestly, the reason I turned this one off was because I actually thought it was too good to include here. It's not an amazing piece of art or anything, but right off the bat I could tell that the quality of the cinematography, editing, lighting, staging, acting was a good deal higher than any other film on this list, so I didn't think I was going to get a very funny experience out of it. Anyways, the only thing I laughed/cringed at was Sarah Fisher's singing. In my Degrassi video, I said this. I don't know if she was doing an affectation for the character, or if this is actually how the actress sings all the time, but it is unbearable. And it turns out that this is actually how she sings all the time. I can't be the only person who thinks this doesn't sound right. I'm really not trying to be mean, like, she clearly has some raw talent, but this style is just baffling to me. I'm sorry, it really took me out of it, but this still isn't a terrible movie. Let's move on to films I watched all the way through. I'm going in chronological order of release because why not? First up, we have She's Too Young. This film features Miriam McDonald, aka Emma from Degrassi, and it is the first of several films that we'll see on this list that seemingly exist exclusively to be fear-mongering morality tales for out-of-touch, overly protective mothers who don't trust or respect their children enough to actually try to connect to them on a personal level. I don't know exactly how Lifetime films are made, but I have to imagine that ones like this pretty much start when some person at the company He reads like a New York Post or Daily Mail article about a scary but isolated event at a high school, then decides to make an entire movie out of it to profit off of the anxiety, ignorance, and frankly outdated social attitudes of said mothers. And that's how we end up with such gems as The Pregnancy Pact, Cyber Seduction, The Cheating Pact, Restless Virgins, Betrayed at 17, Guilty at 17, Stalked at 17, Fugitive at 17. What was I doing at 17? I was in my high school production of Cabaret. Anyways, She's Too Young is about Hannah, a girl with an extremely overbearing mother played by Marcia Gay Harden, and Hannah gets a boyfriend at the height of a disastrous syphilis outbreak at her school. She and pretty much all of her friends, including Dawn, played by Miriam McDonald, contract syphilis, and everyone's pretty sure that the boyfriend is patient zero. So, of course, Hannah's overbearing mother kind of leads the charge on figuring out how this happened. This is one of the most morally confused movies I've ever seen. I'd say that's its biggest problem. In the third act, it throws just about every possible take on its issues at the wall in the hopes that one will stick. Believe it or not, this is not a very effective way to tell a story. Our protagonist Hannah is extremely well-behaved and disciplined. She plays the cello, she gets good grades. Once she gets a boyfriend, it doesn't seem like her performance in school or her music or her social life really go downhill or anything. But she makes this irresponsible sexual decision because she's uninformed and contracts syphilis. Now, if you're a person with a brain, I feel like it's extremely obvious that the solution to the problem here is comprehensive sex education. But I guess that would be too, rational and supported by evidence for Lifetime, so instead they give us this confused melange of unhelpful messaging. First off, the film vindicates Hannah's mother, who throughout the film has been irrationally overprotective, has invaded her daughter's privacy several times. It really doesn't seem like she's supposed to be a character we agree with, but at the end she kind of becomes the hero of the film, the crusader for the parents of these children. And she's like, you know what these kids need? More boundaries.
What are we supposed to do?
Well, you give her boundaries.
I already give her boundaries.
Okay, well, she's not gonna like it, but you make them tighter.
Like Lauren said, we can set stronger boundaries.
This is so weird because the film has shown Hannah's mother giving her nothing but boundaries. Like, clearly, lack of boundaries is not the issue. A lack of education is the issue. But the movie can't even stick to their wrong solution. They also seem to criticize the abstinence-only approach.
I'm fighting this in my own family. How? Well, teaching abstinence. I'm censoring their movies and music, for one thing.
Don't you think it's a little late for that?
But they don't really present an alternative. So what does more boundaries mean in this case, if not abstinence? Which is it? It's either abstinence or education, or maybe even both, but you can't really preach neither. It feels like Lifetime is afraid of offending anyone, so they don't want to lean too far into either side, and as a result they end up functionally saying and accomplishing nothing. This movie's also sexist. Yeah, I said it. The film relentlessly slut-shames both its teenaged female characters and one of the adult mothers just because she goes on dates a lot.
I mean, I don't want to stop you from having a good time.
You want me gone so you can have a good time.
They're like, you go out on too many dates, and that's why your daughter has syphilis, you whore. And strangely, although they spend a lot of time outlining this problem with how boys treat girls in high school relationships, they never even try to address the obvious gendered nature of that problem. If anything, they kind of blame the girls for having low enough self-esteem that they feel the need to put out for these boys, when it's like, isn't the bigger problem maybe that the boys only assign value to girls based on their sexual availability? But like with the abstinence thing, Lifetime doesn't seem interested in addressing the actual roots of these problems, perhaps because they present profound social issues and addressing those things can be controversial. And it's also a lot of work. So yeah, this movie is not helpful even as a cautionary tale because it presents no realistic or useful solutions to the problems it claims to want to solve. But who cares about all that? Let's talk about the funny stuff. Miriam McDonald, to her credit, I think does some of the best acting in this film, but her character Dawn is extremely promiscuous. I didn't even really get that sense at first, but in the scene where she finds out she has syphilis, we find this out.
But I need to know how many boys you've had sex with.
15, maybe 20.
Wow! And then in the scene where she tells her friends that she has syphilis, they're all babysitting together, and she kind of just blurts it out.
Hey, guess what, guys? I have syphilis. What? I have syphilis.
A+ delivery. The climax of the movie involves Hannah going to a party, and a guy tries to assault her, and luckily her nice guys finish last Troye Sivan-looking love interest comes to the rescue with a newfangled camera phone. And in terms of the datedness of this movie, this was probably my favorite quote.
Let her go, man, or I email your face straight to 911.
I actually didn't think the technical execution of this film was that bad, but it's pretty stupid, and I really resent the messaging. Watch it for the giggles if you want. This is probably the movie I say the most about on this list, just because it was the one I had the most ideological issues with.
Yeah, this is really bad.
But next up we have Selling Innocence. This film is about Mia, a teenager who gets scouted by a modeling agent, but once she starts working, she realizes that by modeling, they meant posting pictures of her on a website for paying members. The photos get more and more risque, and soon she finds herself being exploited and unable to permanently remove these pictures from the internet. This movie is in a similar genre to the last one, like, it was definitely only created to make moms afraid of the internet. But to be fair, it actually didn't do a terrible job of predicting the landscape of internet sex work. Like, this concept is pretty similar to services like OnlyFans, right? And I think it's worth talking about how pornography, even pornography that may on the surface appear to be voluntary, can exploit women, especially young women, sometimes even underage girls. It's certainly very preachy, and it kind of does villainize all sex work, though I wouldn't really expect much more from Lifetime even now. But it's a lot more coherent than She's Too Young, and I do think it takes aim more at the men exploiting women without their consent than at the actual women themselves. And honestly, there's a big twist in this movie that I actually thought was pretty effective. But as to the Degrassi aspect, this film only has one Degrassi actor in it, and he doesn't even have that big of a role, but believe me when I tell you that he was the best part. This film features Mike Lobel, aka Jay, as the love interest, Justin Johnson, and let me tell you, when he appeared on screen, I could not believe my eyes.
The debate?
Yeah?
Who did this? Who is responsible for this? If for some reason it isn't glaringly obvious to you, they put our boy in an absolutely atrocious wig. It's obviously a wig. In fact, it doesn't even really look like a wig made for a white person. I could be wrong, but it doesn't look like it was intended for someone like Mike Lobel's hair texture. I think that's part of why it looks so odd. But they also clearly didn't even try to make it look real. Like, there is no hairline. It kind of just begins. Did the hairstylist have personal beef with him or something? I don't understand. So yeah, honestly, the majority of the film isn't awful, but I had no choice but to include it just so I could share that with you. You're welcome. Next we have They Come Back. This film features Niev Wilson, who played Jack Jones as a very young child. It also features Charlotte Arnold, who played Holly J, and Deanna Casalus, who played Alex. This is kind of a horror/mystery film about this psychologist, Faith Hardy, who has some paranormal incidents in her past and takes a case of a little girl whose parents died and is seeing dead people and seemingly making things move on their own and stuff. Faith was previously working with this teenage girl played by Charlotte Arnold who was having similar problems and then ran away and disappeared, so Faith is dealing with guilt over that case. Pretty early on in the film, I realized that I recognized this lead actress playing Faith. I sort of recognized her face, but more so, I recognized her voice.
I believe that there's a rational answer for everything. Just because I don't have the right answer, it probably means that I am asking the wrong question.
And then I realized I recognized her not from The Vampire Diaries itself, but specifically from Jenny Nicholson's Vampire Diaries video. I haven't watched the show, but I have seen that video probably 10 times. In that video, Jenny singled out this actress as giving, like, the worst performance in the entire show.
don't understand how it's so bad.
He thinks I'm helping him protect Elena, so he's been very useful in keeping me informed on everything that's been going on.
And this is her. She's the lead in this movie, Mia Kirshner. I didn't think she was that bad in this movie. She definitely has a kind of low, monotone voice that can come off a little strangely.
I wanted to apologize for opening up your letter the other day.
But she seemed to have more vocal modulation, at least, than what I saw of her in Jenny Nicholson's video. However, there are some bizarre moments with her delivery. I think there are multiple straight-up line flubs that they just left in the movie.
He takes me by the arm, he grabs me. He brings me back into my room, opens up the door and throws me inside. Megan had disappeared.
And on top of that, maybe the strangest scene, in my opinion, is this scene where Faith is telling the story of her previous patient, Charlotte Arnold, to her assistant. It's hard to describe. I don't know if they had her improvise this monologue. It kind of feels that way. Basically, she just goes on and on and on.
Good family, good academic record, healthy. And her parents started having some problems, and the father stormed out of the house, got in his car, hit a patch of ice, and just slammed into a tree and just died instantly. 1 year anniversary of the father's death, the mother comes home, comes upstairs, and then finds Megan on the floor in like a pool of blood, and just said, put my daughter under the battery of tests and psychiatric observation, and she wouldn't communicate with the other doctors and the nurses, and then I was distracted, and I said, I'm going to get you your medication, and I got out. They don't know, they haven't found a body, but,
I guess it is a very realistic depiction of a person telling you a story, but it's kind of too realistic. Like, I would say this is the kind of naturalistic rambling that people don't like to watch in movies. I don't know, this stuck out to me. I really don't understand what happened here. The film as a whole is not that crazy. I don't even think the writing is that bad. It's just these quirks of the acting and execution that make it something else. Next, we're going to take a pretty big time jump all the way to 2014's The Choking Game. One thing right off the bat is that it was almost impossible to find a copy of this movie. It is not available legally anywhere, and I couldn't even find it from my usual unofficial sources. Finally, I found this version on YouTube that was kind of buried in the search results, and it looked like this. So I'm apologizing in advance for both the video and audio quality of any clips I show you. This is what I was working with. This film stars Freya Tingley, I don't know who that is, and Alex Steele, aka Tori from Degrassi. This film is about a high school girl being introduced to the choking game. Now, if you're like me and you had never heard of this concept before this movie, it basically means somehow cutting off oxygen to your brain to get a euphoric high. Don't do it, by the way. That should be obvious, but don't try that. It's a very bad idea. Why can't kids go back to just huffing paint or whatever? I do want to point out that if you're like me and this movie is your introduction to the choking game, all this movie really does is show you exactly how to do the choking game, which seems like probably not the intended result. Anyways, we have Taryn, who, along with her friend Elena, is really alternative and countercultural.
So use your senior year to find your bliss.
Did you really just quote Joseph Campbell?
This is exactly how me and the girlies used to talk to each other in high school. Oh my god, Cynthia, did you seriously just reference Ayn Rand? Taryn makes friends with the cool new girl, Nina, who turns out to be very into the choking game, which intrigues Taryn. What's interesting about the film is that Nina is actually extremely cool about it for the whole time. There are several scenes where she really emphasizes that she's not going to pressure Taryn to do it, she doesn't have to, they won't do it if she's not ready. There's really not much of that arc that you would expect from a movie like this, where she eventually shows her true colors and becomes all evil. Not that that makes it okay that she's asphyxiating herself recreationally, but it is like, it doesn't really seem like she's this bad influence that peer pressures Taryn into doing this. If anything, I have to say it, there were some vibes between these two. Why does this feel so charged? I don't know. There's potential here. You could have had something interesting. One thing I'll say for this movie is that we have a similar overprotective mother character to the mom in She's Too Young, but this movie actually addresses that and has the mom learn a lesson as well, which I thought demonstrated wonderful growth from Lifetime, so at least there's that. Oh my goodness, also the movie ends with Nina, I think, getting permanent brain damage, not even from cutting off oxygen to her brain for too long, but from like falling while playing the choking game and hitting her head. So that's very bleak, it's very intense. But then, right after we learn about that, we get one final scene where the main girl, like, makes up with the boy she had a crush on, and they have their cute little date. And it's like, okay, Nina's head wound hasn't even healed yet, you guys. I don't know if I would recommend this one. It's not the funniest or the most interesting on this list, but I think maybe it entertained me with its exploitative Lifetime morbidity. Moving on, in that same year, we have Sorority Surrogate. This is the kind of Lifetime movie where you just hear the title and you're like, hell yeah! This movie stars Cassie Steele, who played Queen Manny Santos, and of course is the real-life sister of Alex Steele. But the film also features Daniel Kelly, aka Owen Milligan. Here's the thing about Daniel Kelly. Not only did he play a pretty unlikable character on Degrassi, but it turns out that he is quite a lot in real life as well. Let's just say, number one, he's currently trying to make it as a white rapper, and number two, he seems to care a lot about things like cultural Marxism and US election voter fraud. You're Canadian, Daniel. Stay out of it.
She doesn't even go here!
Not the Candace Owens retweet. Yeah, most of these Degrassi actors seem like good eggs, but I don't know about this guy. Anyways, he and Cassie Steele play boyfriend and girlfriend in Sorority Surrogate. Cassie plays Valerie, a sorority girl who's just lost her scholarship and thus decides to become a surrogate mother for a little extra cash. Oh, also the husband in the couple that she's having the baby for is played by Christopher Jackett, who you might remember as Mr. Oleander on Degrassi. In fact, Manny said this about him back in the day.
Hey, Mr. Pedophile! I mean, Oleander, don't make your girlfriend Paige even more jealous of me.
So we have a pretty star-studded cast, but it becomes clear that the husband's cartoonishly evil mother was never happy about his choice of a wife, and she's really not happy that the wife is unable to have children, so she's kind of scheming from the beginning. She kind of asks her husband to take care of it. He's technically a private investigator, but apparently he also sometimes hires a hitman to assassinate people, so he asks said hitman to take care of the wife. But things don't go according to plan, and both the wife and the husband end up dying. So then Valerie is planning to let the wife's sister and her husband adopt the baby, but evil mother-in-law wants it, so she has her husband frame that couple for crimes they didn't commit, and she has Valerie move in with her. I actually kind of liked this part of the movie. It feels a little like an old gothic story, but I wish that this had been more of the film, like to give us some time to trust the mother-in-law at first and then slowly grow suspicious. Because in the movie, she's acting very suspicious right off the bat.
We're having lamb?
I'm afraid you can't have lamb. Meat would be too difficult to digest for someone in your condition. But Lydia has prepared a wonderful hearty vegetable stew. You'll love it.
If someone said this stuff to me, I would assume they were trying to make me into foie gras or something. One funny thing in this movie is the subplot where the hitman is pursuing the private investigator husband because I guess he wants his payment for killing the couple. And I'm sorry I'm always saying things like this, but in their scenes together, the sexual tension was palpable.
It'd be a lot easier to bury out here than in the city, man.
You don't have to do this.
Didn't have to kill those kids for you either.
I guess maybe when I start to get bored by a movie, this is just where my mind wanders. I also found the private investigators acting pretty funny.
What, are you gonna stab me in the neck with a screwdriver? I got a gun, girl.
But that's about it for Sorority Surrogate. If you're ever looking for a good bad Lifetime watch, it is pretty goofy. Last but not least, we have Thicker Than Water. I think it was also alternatively titled The Twisted Sun. First of all, can we take a moment to appreciate this horrendous poster? Why does he look like that? This is a Lifetime thriller starring none other than Eric Osborne, aka Miles Hollingsworth III himself. I admit, I was super excited for this one. You can probably tell I like Miles. I don't even think I like him for a lot of the reasons most people like him. I think I like him a little ironically. I like his melodrama. and his big gangly limbs. So yeah, I couldn't wait to see this actor in a new context. This film is about a grieving mother. She and her husband recently lost their son, Zach, and although the husband and their daughter are moving on, the mother, Paige, is still having a really hard time. She's depressed, she can't bring herself to go back to work. So to help pay the bills while Paige is out of work, the family decide to rent out their spare room to a tenant, Brandon Wilson. Brandon appears to be this nerdy, socially awkward guy. He's studying plant biology, just like the family's son Zach was studying. The movie shows us right from the beginning that Brandon is stalking the family. Unfortunately, Lifetime does this a lot. Like, there's no twist or unpredictability to it. They just immediately let you know exactly what's going on. And this is another film I would say has the roommate plot. Like, Brandon moves in and slowly his behavior escalates and we realize that he's a dangerous maniac trying to insert himself into the protagonist's lives. It's also one of those bad thriller movies where the ultimate explanation for his antics is kind of just, he's crazy. I guess in a way I prefer that to, say, actually putting a label, like a real mental illness, to his behavior, because especially in dumb movies like this, I think that can get very insensitive very fast. But I also don't think his motivations were very well thought out. I guess Brandon killed his parents as a child because they were abusing him, and the pretty weak motivation for why he targeted Zach's family is that he saw how much Paige loved Zach and he wanted that.
I've wanted what Zach had since the first time I saw you drop him off at college when we were in freshman year. And you wouldn't stop hugging and kissing him goodbye, no matter how much it embarrassed him. And nobody's ever loved me like that, not even close.
It's also implied that he was somehow responsible for Zach's death, but they don't really go into that at all, which seems odd. I don't know, I feel like I needed a little more substance here, like why them, why now? Was Zach really the first person Brandon ever saw who had a nice relationship with his family? That didn't quite track to me. But there are a lot of funny moments in this movie. When Brandon is trying to kill the dad in the family, he puts a bunch of bees in his car because the dad is allergic to bees, so he gets in an accident. And when the mom goes to the hospital, the doctor is like, I don't know, he has a head injury, but it also looks like he's been attacked by bees.
And he's still in surgery. We also found multiple bee stings all over his body.
There are some scenes where the teenage daughter and her friend Kara are trying to find out more about Brandon by looking at his Facebook page, and they're like, he only created this account 2 years ago, and he only posts selfies that barely get any likes. That's so weird. And I was like, no, it's not. That's maybe the most realistic thing in this movie. Then from that, there's this drama where the daughter's friend, Kara, accidentally likes one of his photos. I actually have a friend from high school named Kara, and this is what I say whenever she likes one of my Instagram posts.
You must be Kara. You're the one that liked my photo.
But by far, the funniest part of this movie is the ending. Throughout the entire film, Brandon has had something of a fixation on fire. It's how he killed his parents, he kills one of his classmates with fire, he's constantly playing with this lighter. So in our typical climactic fight scene, Paige and her daughter are physically fighting Brandon, and Paige manages to spray lighter fluid on him and burn him alive. Of all the places I expected this movie to go, this was not one of them. But even better, after that bonkers scene, we cut to 3 months later when the family is back on their feet, and the movie ends in like 30 seconds. I'm sorry, but I need a little more of a denouement after a scene like this. Maybe they had a specific TV slot to fill and ran out of time and just had to end the movie mid-script. Anyways, this movie's actually a little more competent than a lot of the films on this list. The look of it isn't terrible, nor is the acting or dialogue. I enjoyed Eric Osborne's performance, too. He has this interesting scene early on where it's clear that Brandon is trying to, like, mimic what he thinks are normal things to say.
I'm actually really close with my parents, and I have a sister, too. That drives me crazy sometimes, but that's what little sisters do, right?
And then as things ramp up in the third act, it seems like he has some fun with it.
Ruin everything! This is your fault! This is why this is happening! It's your fault!
If you're a Miles stan, ironic or unironic, this is probably essential viewing. Well, if I learned anything from this video, it's that Degrassi alumni should fire their agents. I'm kidding. I actually love that so many of these actors have done so many films like this. It's kind of a win-win situation because the cast get that sweet, sweet Lifetime money, and I get to watch stupid movies starring Degrassi actors. I know I didn't cover every single movie like this. I'm sure I'll get some comments like, what about Bring It On 6, worldwide #CheerSmack starring Christine Prosperi? Well, there's already a great video about that. What about Murder in the Hamptons starring Aislinn Paul and Monroe Chambers? Well, it was kinda boring and it didn't appear to feature those actors very prominently. What about Devil's Diary starring Miriam McDonald? Well, I don't have an excuse for that one. I actually did watch the entire thing and then somehow completely forgot to include it in my script. But think of the remaining Degrassi actor TV movies like Buried Treasure for you to discover on your own. Once again, I'm so astounded by all the attention my channel has received in the last month. I actually have a little update about my last video. As you know, if you've watched it, I made this silly painting of a frame from the Sayonara Miles Hollingsworth scene, and in my video I said this. It's times like this that I really wish I was a big YouTuber, because then I could, like, auction this off to the highest bidder. Who wants it? Now, since the video blew up, I've actually had quite a few people express interest in this painting, which is something I really wasn't prepared for. So I think I've come up with a solution. I'm gonna sell prints. That's right, if you would like your very own this in your home, you can have one. The link is in the description. In the end, I decided to just go with old reliable, which in this case means posting it on my Redbubble. On the bright side, this means that I can make it available on a multitude of extremely funny products. I have no idea what demand for this will look like, so this will be an interesting experiment. Consider this my first merch drop. Also, given my recent increase in viewers, I would love to hear what videos you'd be interested in seeing. Like I said, I'm not a Degrassi channel, so please not only Degrassi-related suggestions, but if you want, let me know what kind of videos you like, what media I should check out. I feel like I don't really know you people yet, and I would be very interested to find out. Thanks for watching, and subscribe if you're an impressionable young woman who's about to make some really poor decisions.